What is up, everyone? Justin Parnell here, and today we're going to be upgrading the Wild of Eldraine Commander Precon, Virtue, and Valor, and see how tall we can stack those auras. And if you want to get your hands on this deck or other Wild of Eldraine products, just click the link below in the description or visit your friendly local game store. All right, let's get cracking. And as always, I want to take a closer look at the primary commander of the deck to get an idea of what the deck wants us to be doing. And that is Eldraine of the Wild Court. It's clear from the jump that we want to be working with auras, auras, auras. The first line says that whenever Eldraine enters the battlefield or attacks, create a virtuous roll token on another target creature you control. And you're probably about a step ahead of me saying, that sounds an awful lot like an ethereal armor token. The key difference with roll tokens is that only one controlled by the same player can be attached to a creature at a time. The second ability says that any time an enchanted creature you control makes contact with an opponent's face, draw a card. I want to point out the wording here. So often in recent design we see text that limits it to each player or once a turn. Not so here. Hit your buddy with 7 enchanted creatures? Enjoy your new hand. And Eldraine is powerful enough that we don't need to look elsewhere for a commander to lead our aura-focused deck. You know, unless somebody else pops up that's better suited for the job. Let's just take a look at the brand new cards that are exclusive to Virtue and Valor. Other than Eldraine, we have Gilwain, Casting Director, Knick-Knack Oof, Liberated Livestock, Loamcrafter Fawn, Oxtrover, Timber Paladin, Unfinished Business, Giant Inheritance, and Songbird's Blessing. So this is the deck in all of its glory. And before we move on to the ads, I want to talk about how we're going to be refining the goal of this deck using this base. Oftentimes with pre-constructed commander decks, the design of the decks gives the owner an option of 2 to 3 paths to take if they want to try to keep the identity of the deck. And this is a rare case where there's really only one realistic path, and that is going all in on auras. So our goal with this deck is to trim the fat and really focus on how to best accomplish the goal of winning with auras as our first, second, and third theme. As usual, we're going to replace around 40% of non-land cards, so around 24 cards in total. And as I do every time, a reminder of why I like to focus on the non-lands over the lands. Unless it's a land that provides more utility than just making the right colors of mana, you're just going to get farther by adding cards that are more focused on the theme than just cards that are really efficient at making the right colors of mana. And if you have some of those really great mana-fixing lands, wonderful. Add them to the deck. If not, feel free to take your land-adjusting journey as quickly or as slowly as you need to as you add those cards to your collection. One of the biggest changes we're going to be making to this deck is changing the velocity of how our games are going to play out. This is going to be a consistent theme. Mana-intensive cards will be removed, and faster, more efficient cards will be added. And that's going to be the core tenet of this deck and our deck building. We're going to be drawing so many cards that we need to move the average mana value of the deck way down to be able to cast them all. Because of that, this time we're going to do things a bit differently. I'm going to show replacements in groups rather than first doing adds and then doing cuts. And the reason for that here is I want to put my approach to deck building under a microscope so it's a little bit clear as we go along. And keep in mind, the math won't be exactly 1-to-1 swaps, but it will add up to 100 at the very end. Our first group, likely the most critical. We're making some changes to the auras in the deck. We have 7 new auras that we're adding to this deck, starting with the group that protects our most valuable creatures by totem armor. Spider Umbra, Felidar Umbra, and Hyena Umbra all provide preemptive protection, which is critical when we're going tall with creatures. Bear Umbra is already in the deck, which is great too, even at 4 mana. To have cards that break through once we've gone tall, we're adding Rancor, Audacity, and Spirit Mantle. Just keep in mind, Spirit Mantle will protect it from Eldraine's role-granting ability as well. To go even taller, we have All That Glitters. And finally, Instill Energy is a childhood favorite of mine. Nobody expects the green-white auras deck to have haste out of nowhere, and it really works well with a couple of creatures we'll be adding later. The auras we're removing are either significantly more expensive than the ones we're adding despite their large effects, or aren't as powerful as some of the new options. Indomitable Might, Pollen Bright Wings, Verdant Embrace are all powerful effects, but we're really trying to shave mana off of our auras as we want to play as many cards as possible. Careful Cultivation, Warbriar Blessing, and Snake Umbra are cheaper, but they can't compete with the new cards that we've replaced them with. And to keep in line with our goal of lowering the curve, let's look at how we can best utilize our mana each turn. Starnheim Courser, Hero of Iroas, and Herald of the Pantheon reduce the cost of our enchantments across the board. They join Jukai Naturalist, Danitha, Starfield Mystic, and Transcendent Envoy in the base list to really make a massive impact on cost reduction. Wildgrowth and Wolf Willowhaven turn our ramp into auras, and Composer of Spring helps us jump up in mana every time we make an enchantment. And to make room, we've cut Paradise Druid, Sylvan Ranger, and 3 basic lands. And even though we draw a lot of cards, Graveyard Recursion is going to be important to me in every single deck that I build. Both Danitha New Benelia's Light and classic throwback Nomad Mythmaker let us return auras from the graveyard once a turn each. Catilda Dawnheart Martyr starts as a massive threat that returns to turn a new creature into a massive threat. For our cuts, Sun Titan and Liberated Livestock are both very expensive to act as recursion. Lonecrafter Fawn is a very cool new card, but also unneeded here, as we'd rather get our recursion without having to give up anything in return, and consistently each turn. And this is going to be the most controversial cut. Retether is biting the dust. I know it sounds crazy, because if it doesn't fit in this deck, where does it fit? But hear me out. Our new deck is going to operate better when we can play with aggression, and Retether wants you to make one huge splash. On top of that, most of the time we're going to be having a bunch of auras in the graveyard is after a sweeper. So we'll be loading up all of our auras from that graveyard onto 1 or 2 creatures, making them exceptionally juicy targets. This is probably going to be the card that most people keep in the deck after this video, so go ahead and let me know in the comments how crazy I am for even considering to cut this. And of course, while Graveyard Recursion is great, drawing cards from your deck can feel just as good, or better, I guess, for some people. Even though we have lots of card draw like most enchantment-based decks do, we can still make room for SRAM Senior Edificer and Lightpaw's Emperor's Voice, who skips drawing cards altogether and just puts new auras right into play. And to do that, we're losing Rishkar's expertise and Oxtrover, the former usually drawing a fistful of cards at once instead of one at a time, and the latter being a very cool card that is just wholly out of place in this deck. And of course, we're changing up our interaction suite. Path to Exile is a must for white decks, and Song of the Dryad doubles as an aura. Silkguard is perfect here to protect everyone who's enchanted, even when you cast it for X equals 0. And the cards that are going to go are Realm Cloak Giant, Shalai Voice of Plenty, and Austere Command. Something that I've learned in my 15 years of playing Commander is to avoid putting cards in your deck that can absolutely destroy you if they fall into the wrong hands. As someone whose favorite colors in Magic are black, black, and black, I cannot tell you the number of people I have demoralized with their own cards. Austere Command would absolutely knock us silly. I don't even want to have it in a game we're playing at all, so the first step is removing it from the only deck at the table we can, our own. And finally, the Game Enders. Or Sledgehammers, as I like to call them. Both Archon of the Wild Rose and Halvar God of Battle change the dynamic of your combat step as soon as they hit the table. And good news, there are no Sledgehammer level cards we are removing. We need those cards if we want to finish the game on our own terms. The rest of the cuts are cards that don't exactly measure up to the adds or don't make sense within the context of the new deck. Those are Aura Gnarlid, Celestial Archon, Destiny Spinner, Sir Armont the Redeemer, and Tithe Taker. Some of you have probably been doing the math at home. That's 25 cuts and 24 adds, so what's missing? Fresh from Wilds of Eldraine is Yenna Redtooth Regent. Trust me when I say, this card is an absolute powerhouse and might be the most important card we're adding to this deck. Yenna's ability to copy enchantments is unparalleled. And if she copies an aura, she keeps going until you run out of mana or pick a non-aura to copy. She's so powerful, in fact, that she would make a great commander. A great commander for another deck. Look, I'll level with you. I may have made an attempt to turn this deck into a Yenna deck, but I couldn't do it and still consider it an upgrade. There just needs to be too many changes to make it work. So Eldraine is safe for now. And as usual, I want to talk about a handful of cards that might be harder to come by, but are really great additions to the deck if you already have them in your collection. Calyx, Guided by Fate, gets so excited when you smash someone's face with an enchanted creature, he wants to copy one of your enchantments. Heroic Intervention is always amazing in a proactive deck. Sigarda's Aid lets you surprise opponents in combat. Kadama of the West Tree serves as a massive ramp spell every turn. And my favorite of the bunch is Zenk, Paladin Unbroken, from the Dungeons & Dragons movie Secret Lair. This guy would definitely count as another Sledgehammer. So overall, we've changed 25 cards, which is one over our initial target of 24. Here are all 25 changes we've made to Virtue and Valor, now more fitting of its name than ever. Was there a card I completely missed or never should have been cut? Let me know in the comments. And before we finish up, I want to talk about some of my favorite combos in our new deck. Instill Energy really loves a few creatures in this deck, namely Sanctum Weaver, Nomad Mythmaker, and Yenna. They each have really powerful effects when you tap them, especially when you give them haste unexpectedly. Or if you're feeling particularly punchy, search up Instill Energy with Light Paws to bring the hammer down out of nowhere. Ajani's Chosen, Archon of Sun's Grace, and Siona all love when you go wide. Each aura will make a new target for another one, allowing you to create an army out of nowhere with our significantly reduced mana costs on our auras. With the massive amount of draw the deck is capable of, don't forget about Hall of Heliod's Generosity hiding amongst your lands. You can usually draw the card you put on the top of your deck right away to keep the pain train going. And if you want to get started with this deck, check out the link below in the description or head to your friendly local game store. Thank you again for watching, and if you enjoyed this content, please be sure to like this video and subscribe to this channel so you don't miss any other great Commander content or other singleton format stuff that I love to do. Thank you all again. I'm Justin Parnell. We'll see you next time.